Alright everybody, Adam here. So, I've been trying to get back to a more regular video schedule, but I came down with something on Friday, and that knocked me out for Saturday and Sunday. So, here I am. Kind of sucked because it was, right on the heels of coming back from Europe. So, it's been a solid, week and a half that I've kind of been behind on training. And I tried to do some workouts while I was sick, but that turned out to be a mistake. Fun fact, you can work out while you're sick, but it depends on what kind of sick it is. In my case, it just made my headaches worse. So, anyway, today's topic is brought up by a friend on Twitter. And her question is, essentially, is there a good way to build glutes without having to squat? And the answer is 100% yes, absolutely. And the funny thing, too, is that squats aren't even the best way to build glutes. They're actually not. The best way to build glutes is the hip thrust exercise, which was essentially pioneered by my friend Brett Contreras, who did a whole bunch of research on it, and he did some muscle activation studies and showed that basically you got more activation doing the hip thrust than you did from the squat. And that's not really unexpected because the squat is really not a glute exercise. It really isn't. It's not a glute-focused exercise at all. It certainly uses the glutes a lot, absolutely, and particularly at certain points of the movement, absolutely. But it's an exercise that's primarily focused on knee extension and not hip extension. Hip extension exercises tend to involve the glutes and the low back and the hamstrings a lot more. So that is where you're going to want to see the most results. At the same time, most people don't really know about most hip extension exercises because, again, we're just told to squat, squat, and squat. And we don't have as good of a body weight. Like the squat is it's good as a body weight. It's good with dumbbells. It's good with barbells. When it comes to hip-focused exercises, the hip thrust is very new. The glute bridge works, but is kind of an easy exercise for a lot of people. And the deadlift and all of, its many variations do require equipment. So, So, unfortunately, for a lot of people, hip-focused training has not really passed into their lexicon yet. It's not really penetrated. But fortunately, as I said, Brett did a lot of research, found out that the hip thrusts are superior, and now his whole shtick is that he branded himself the glute guy, and he's all about building asses now. So he will talk about that at every opportunity possible. Now, that being said, the hip thrust can be a hard exercise to load. For those that don't know of it, essentially you're loading a bar across your hips and you're thrusting it up into the air with a thrusting motion. There's a couple major issues with that. One is that as the weight gets heavier, if you're going to do it pretty heavy, you do need to have some kind of padding or it's really going to tear up your hips and that's really going to hurt. There are a few different options. Airex foam pads are the ones that I've always found most convenient, but there's all kinds of things you can do. The other one is that hip thrusts are awkward. They're extremely awkward, particularly since they're not very well known yet. It looks like you're humping the air. So if you're going to go into your local gym, they might look at you a little bit funny. So, and that's not to say that you shouldn't do it. And, absolutely, if you want to, make some creepy eye contact, while you're doing it, like, whole points to you. But if you don't want to be stared at, maybe you might want to do it at home. Use, some kind of bench or weights that you have at home if possible. So the hip thrust is your best option directly for building glutes. At the same time, like I said, there's so many any kind of hip dominant exercise will do the trick because again it's going to involve a lot more hamstrings, it's going to involve a lot more glutes, it's going to involve a lot more lower back. So that includes your deadlift, that includes your back extension. I don't recommend Supermans are kind of this common low back whatever exercise that's actually kind of garbage. So don't really do those. Deadlifts. Hyperextensions, reverse hyperextensions, if you happen to have a reverse hyperextension machine, not many people do. Kettlebell swings, all kinds of stuff. Honestly, pull-throughs, yeah, sumo deadlifts, anything, even sumo squats, will involve the glutes a little bit more, will involve the hips a little bit more. So those are all options that you can do that will get you away from the dreaded squats. And the main thing you have to understand is that, you don't have to be tied to the squat. You don't have to ever be tied to the squat. If there's any kind of exercise that uses the muscle that you're looking to train or build, you can use any exercise that does so. Certainly, some exercises are more effective than others. Some exercises, generally tend to be more useful than others. But you can use pretty much anything to get, as long as it works, it'll help you. It'll get you there. It'll push you towards your goals. So, don't be picky. And if you have to modify things up a little bit, if you have to, try something a little bit out of the ordinary, don't be afraid to. There was a coach, a friend of mine, Jason Helms, really great guy, who came out recently and he said he doesn't squat or deadlift at all for his lower body training. And there's plenty of other things you can do. There's lunges, there's leg machines, leg extensions, leg curls, leg presses. And those are all excellent ways to build your legs. It does. If there's not a particular athletic goal that you're training for, if you're just training to build movement efficiency a little bit, to build a little bit of muscle, to build a little bit of function, to get the metabolic benefits of training, then you don't ever have to be tied down to a specific movement. You only have to be tied down to a specific movement if that is directly needed for some kind of athletic endeavor. Like, for example, if you're a powerlifter, well, then you have to squat, because powerlifters have to squat. That's the definition of the sport. When it comes to stuff like, like football players, well, they could squat. They need some kind of strong leg training. And, that could be squatting. That could be really heavy lunging or, split squatting or whatever. That could be heavy deadlifting. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do that. So, just ask yourself, look at your goals, and, if your goals don't dictate that you have to train in a specific way, then, feel free to change it up a little bit. That's my little bit of advice for today. So anyway, I'm losing my voice, as you can probably tell. So I will leave you guys there for tonight. That is all for today. As always, let me know what you want to see in future videos, and see you guys next time. Good night.